Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Hey fellas, I just want to remind you that starting the week of July the 6th, the Great Man Within podcast is going to be moving to a 2 times a week frequency, down from 3 times a week. We are currently going Monday, Wednesday, Friday releases. We're going to be going to a Monday and a Friday release. Monday are the big long episodes, typically about 50 to 60 minutes a piece, sometimes a little bit longer. That's both Brian and I, most of the time with a guest that we're interviewing. And then Friday is going to be my outlet for solo episodes, like the one that I'm doing here today. And as many of you remember, during quarantine, I ramped up the schedule to daily, which was an unbelievable way for me to get to know you, support you, to go on that journey together to stabilize our inner foundation. And now, as we're starting to move back into a better normal, what I am focused on is building out community. So you're not just sitting and listening to episodes on your own, but to be able to bring you together, whether it's through a Facebook group or through online challenges or in-person challenges when that's prudent to do so. That's where I'm going to be spending my time, energy, and effort, is to bring the men of the world together who are listening to this so that you can meet one another and start to create a shift so that more great men can identify one another and work together. So again, that's starting the week of Monday, July the 6th. We're moving to 2 times a week frequency. All right, so once upon a time, my boy Napoleon Hill said, "Every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind." I'll read that again. Every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind. Now let's break down some of this wisdom from Napoleon Hill. The linchpin of this quote is the part where he says, which he permits to occupy his mind. Meaning, yes, of course, we are the sum value. We are the culmination of the dominating thoughts in our mind, and we have a choice as to which thoughts we permit to persist in our minds. Now, it's easier said than done because I know that all of us, I've certainly had the experience of thoughts running through my mind that I didn't want there. Thoughts that would sabotage me, self-defeating thoughts, fearful thoughts, recurring thoughts that I just couldn't seem to vanquish from my mind. And yet, even when I didn't want those, they seemed to pop up over and over and over again against my will. And so on a certain level, it can feel like I don't have control over my thoughts. And where I've seen men get into trouble is when we get frustrated by not being able to, quote, control our thoughts. And I want to share with you why I believe controlling your thoughts is a recipe for disaster. This belief that you can control your thoughts is a recipe for disaster. And it's why so many people feel powerless over what's going on in their mind, feel like they're constantly sabotaged, feel like they're just in the passenger seat of their own car while their thoughts are driving them to unsafe places and sometimes off of cliffs. So I want to share with you 3 pieces of wisdom that I learned along the way that took my focus off of this need, this incessant need to control my thoughts, which was a game that I kept losing over and over and over again, and instead focused on guiding my thoughts as they came up. And these 3 pieces of wisdom ironically allowed me to feel a much deeper sense of control over my thoughts once I stopped feeling the need to control them. So let me drop the 3 pieces of wisdom on you first, then I'll unpack each one. Number 1, your mind produces thoughts the way that your heart produces beats. You can't stop them. Your mind produces thoughts the way that your heart produces beats. Number 2, a belief is simply a thought that you just keep on thinking. And number 3 is guide, don't control your thoughts. Guide, don't control your thoughts. So let's go back to number 1. Your mind produces thoughts the way that your heart produces beats. I first heard this by a meditation teacher named Emily Fletcher, who's a friend of mine. She's very well regarded in the meditation space. I believe she wrote a book that may have hit some of the bestseller lists. She practices Vedic meditation, which is having a mantra that you chant to yourself quietly in your mind while you're meditating. And when she unpacked this quote about your mind produces thoughts the way your heart produces beats, she said that it would be silly to try and stop your mind from producing thoughts. That's what its job is. Your heart's job is to produce beats. Hopefully you can't stop your heart. She even did this in like the room one day. She was like, okay, everyone try to stop your heart from beating. And she's like, that always scares me when I say that, but no one has been able to accomplish that feat yet, because if you could, you wouldn't be long for this world, right? Your mind produces thoughts unconsciously without you trying. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a world-renowned neuroscientist, who's written, countless books that have hit New York Times bestseller lists. He's also been someone who's led people through radical change, healing old traumas and pains. He healed himself from near paralysis through the power of thought and also, of course, medicine as well. But he estimates, as a neuroscientist, that we have over 70,000 thoughts per day. Now, I don't know how you measure that. Who the hell knows if neuroscience is advanced enough for us to be actually confident in that number? But let's just say that he's in the ballpark, right? Let's just say he's somewhat close. We are producing an ungodly amount of thoughts over the course of the day. You break that down per second, it's multiple thoughts per second. There is no way that you could ever control that many thoughts over the course of the day. You couldn't control it. They're going to happen whether you like it or not. And one of the things that he shared also is that 90% of our thoughts are the same as the day before. Again, I don't know how you measure that, but let's just say that he's close. If 90% of our 70,000 thoughts per day are the same as the day before, 63,000 thoughts, the same today as they were yesterday and the day before and here on and here out, that's how we get to Napoleon Hill's quote about every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind. Now, many of those thoughts, of the 70,000 thoughts we have per day, we're never going to be able to control. But there are ones that peek their way to the surface that we do have conscious awareness of. I'm not good enough, or I never win the big one, or I can make money, but I always lose money. I can't be counted on in the moment where it's the most important, right? Like whatever those self-defeating thoughts are that come up that we wish to overcome, they're there for a reason, primarily because there's something deeper rooted in our emotions that allows that to pop up, to be the tip of the iceberg. And when we bring it to our conscious awareness, we have a choice of what to do with it. But I certainly know when I've tried to vanquish those thoughts, when I tried to obliterate those thoughts, the opposite effect has happened. That thought becomes stronger. Whatever you resist persists, right? So there needs to be a different approach. Unless you're one of those few people who is able to feel a thought and just obliterate it. Most of us struggle with these persistent thoughts that sabotage us, or at the very least aren't helping us to achieve the life that we want. So the first place that helped me to get started in understanding the shift from controlling thoughts to guiding thoughts was recognizing how many thoughts I produce per day, and that my mind's job is to produce thoughts. I should never ask it to stop, rather to start to take inventory of the thoughts that are coming to the conscious surface, because it gives me really, really deep clues about what's going on underneath the hood. This is why meditation is so important to me in my practice. And Corey Muscara, who's been on our show a number of times, was one of the first people who really made this crystal clear for me. He said that successful meditation, defining successful meditation is really a losing game in and of itself. But people believe that in order for you to successfully meditate, you have to clear your mind of all thoughts. He's like, that's the absence. That's not the absence. That's not at all the essence of meditation. It's being able to observe your thoughts without judgment, right? To witness your thoughts and to inspect them without judgment. So when I bring those two pieces together of your mind produces thoughts the way your heart produces beats, and my job through meditation is just to witness, to be curious about and interested in what's there, now I have some more power on where to guide it. The second piece of wisdom, which I learned from Abraham Hicks, or if you've ever heard of Esther Hicks, Jerry Hicks, their books, Abraham Hicks is all over YouTube. It's really about the process of the law of attraction. And the second piece of wisdom is a belief is a thought that you simply keep on thinking. A belief is a thought that you simply keep on thinking. Like, where do beliefs come from? A thought that continues to dominate. There was a period of time in my life where I had a thought that I could never be an entrepreneur. I don't have the discipline. And I was spending 15 years in corporate during that time, and all of my schooling, that led up to that point, the 18 years of schooling before I became, or 21 years of schooling before I became a full-time employee, I'd always followed someone else's instructions. I was really good at following priests' instructions, coaches' instructions, parents' instructions, teachers' instructions. So I had this prevailing belief in my mind that I could never be an entrepreneur because I don't have the discipline. I don't have the vision. And so the more I thought about that, the more I cemented my future as being a corporate employee. There was one day, though, where a desire burned to have freedom. And so while that desire burned for me to explore one day becoming my own boss, that thought around, I could never be an entrepreneur, I don't have the discipline, started to shift. It was kind of like, maybe I can be an entrepreneur if I were to find the discipline. You see how subtly that shift took place? And then over time, it was like, I'm going to find a way to be an entrepreneur because I've already found discipline in these areas of my life. Now I would just need to learn how to do it here. And over a period of time, it was like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to make this happen. And then eventually I became an entrepreneur. The belief was just a thought that I kept thinking over and over and over again. This is why you hear people are so passionate about affirmations, saying things over and over and over again until you believe them. And I've gotten into trouble in the past trying affirmations that didn't feel right for me because the distance between where I was and what I wanted that affirmation to be felt like so far away that I was actually more connected to the resistance of that affirmation. So for example, if I was making $35,000 a year back at the beginning of my career and I was like, I'm going to make $100,000, I actually was so far away, I couldn't figure out how I could ever possibly get there in the near term, that every time I said that, it actually made me feel more about the absence of that money, the helplessness of that money. So that affirmation actually was sabotaging me. What we're talking about here is something that feels like a level up, something that feels good, that generates momentum. When I learned how to play that game, then I played this game of iteration. It's like, okay, I'm making $35,000 a year. I'm going to find a way to make $50,000. When I started making $50,000, $75,000 is right on the horizon. I know that I'm worth $75,000 and I'm going to make sure that everyone in the company knows that I'm worth it. That's how I started playing the game. A belief is just a thought that you keep on thinking. Last year, when I went on back in July of 2019, I went on a hike in Colorado where this thought came to me about helping 10 million men get on the path of doing inner work so that we could create a tectonic shift of great men who are emerging in their families, in their lives, in their communities. 10 million men discovering and living the great man within them was just a thought last year. Now that I've connected to it every single day, it's a belief and a knowing that it will happen. It's sunk from this thought in my head that was intellectually based and somewhat inspirational to something that is now in my DNA, cellularly, in my entire body, a belief and a knowing that it's going to happen, and all of my actions are now aligned with it. And then third and finally, and this is basically the thing that we talked about from the very beginning, guide, don't control your thoughts. Guide, don't control your thoughts. There are some days I wake up in the morning and all of a sudden my monkey mind is in hyperactive mode. It's an overwhelm of all the things that I need to do. And when I've tried to control my thoughts to be like, shut up, go away, stop, what I found is there's this anxiety that kicks up in my stomach, knowing that these thoughts haven't been addressed. And in the past, when I tried to control them, my methods for controlling them were either drinking too much, porn, sexting too much, trying to obliterate and numb them out, versus now it's like, okay, I'm stressed out. I feel like I'm overwhelmed. What do I need to do in order to hear these thoughts and then guide them to a higher ground? I'm not going to go from a place of being stressed to a place of confident like that. I need to gently guide from, okay, I've got 20 things I need to do that's going to be tiring today, to what's the first thing that I need to get done? What would allow me to feel a sense of relief? Whenever I feel a negative emotion, I'm constantly looking for the thought that will give me a sense of relief. This is what Abraham Hicks teaches in the book, Ask and It Is Given, Learning How to Manifest Your Desires. When you are feeling a negative thought, you're not looking for the 180 degree positive thought. You're looking for anything that gives you relief from that thought. And it could just be a minor iteration. For example, many of the men who listen to this podcast are seeking purpose and can find themselves in a place of despair, right? Like having sought purpose for a period of time and then still not finding what lights them up in life. So that recurring thought of, I have no idea what I'm here for. I have no idea what makes me passionate or inspired. Maybe I'll never figure that out. Like you can get caught in that thought loop. Well, all you're looking for is a thought that provides a little bit of relief. You're not looking in that moment to find and figure out your purpose. You're just looking for a thought that will upgrade the vibration, that will upgrade the feeling. And it could be something as simple as, you know what? That presentation I did at work today made me feel inspired because I like speaking in front of people. Maybe I can go down that road. You know, that movie that I watched on Netflix, I was just watching for entertainment value, inspired me to think about maybe writing this blog post on this subject. That's interesting. All you're looking for when you're in a place of negative thoughts and you're in that loop is not for the end-all be-all solution. All you're looking for is a thought that provides relief, and then build on that thought, and then build on that thought, and then on that thought. All you're doing is playing this little game of iteration until you lead yourself to a higher ground where you're now starting to produce thoughts that are more empowering. You stick with those thoughts over a long period of time. They become beliefs. Those beliefs then sink in to your being. You start to show up differently. You start to vibrate differently. You start to align your actions differently. And this is how you start to change your life. This is what Napoleon Hill is talking about when he says, every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind.